Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining my session, which is all about automating Horizon Cloud Next Gen. I will talk about how to start with automating Horizon Cloud Next Gen, what you need to do for that. My name is Ivan de Mes. I work as a EUC architect for Orange Business in the Netherlands. I am also a vExpert, specifically in the area of end-user computing cloud, but I'm also a vExpert Pro. I'm also part of the Dutch vEUC TechCon leadership team that organizes a yearly event that is fully focused on EUC products, VMware EUC products and services. I also have my personal blog, and you can find me on some social channels as well. So like I mentioned, I work for Orange Business, and we deliver a lot of standardized services to our customers. And of course, we want to do that in a quick and uniform way. So therefore, the heart is a little bit out of place, but still, we love automation. And we are using a lot of automation already for a lot of other services that we are providing to our customers. So we started looking at how can we provide remote desktops and applications to our customers, delivered as a service. And for us, Horizon Cloud Next Gen is a very good fit for that. And the reason for that is that Horizon Cloud Next Gen has been built from ground up with support for API. So with that API, we are capable of doing a lot of things that you would normally do in a console. You can now also do that with the API. In fact, everything that you do within the Horizon Universal Console translates into an API request. And as you can see, I've opened up my developer tools in the browser. And when I go to the Horizon Universal Console, you will see that it does a request to a so-called request URL. And with that, we also have a certain payload. And this payload, in this case, we are configuring, for instance, a domain. The payload specifies what we want to configure. So what would be a good first approach if you want to start looking at automating Horizon Cloud Next Gen? VMware, with the new version, so the Next Gen version, created a dedicated website, which is all about the Next Gen API that specifies what kind of requests you can do, what kind of things you can configure, but also how to configure. So what kind of requests do I have to do, what is the request URL, etc., etc. But first things first, what we need to do first is to create an API token, and that gives us the ability to eventually talk to the Horizon Cloud Next Gen API. So that's something that I want to demonstrate in this video. So what we will do is we will log on to the Cloud Services control plane. And once we've done that, what we do is we go to the drop-down menu. And then we go to My Account. And when we are there, we open up the API Tokens tab. So there's an option to generate a new API token. So we click on that. We give our token a name. You can choose whatever you want. And with that, you can also specify for how long that token is valid. And you can specify months, days, years, whatever you want. After that, what you have to do is also specify the permissions. So you can specify what kind of permissions you want for that API token. And in this case, we select our Horizon Cloud service. And there are different roles or permissions. And we choose the administrator. And that gives us full permissions for the API within Horizon Cloud Services. You can also specify that you want a reminder so that when the token is about to expire, that you can also get an email. Then at least you know that the token is about to expire. Something very important, once the token has been generated, you have to copy the token and you have to store it somewhere safe because it is only provided once. So if you lose it, then you have to regenerate the token again. So the next thing that we have to do is, now that we have the API token, is we need to obtain an access token. So we're using the API token to get a, let's say, short life token that is needed for every request that you do towards the API. And there are different tools that you can use, whatever you prefer. It can be either curl, Postman, PowerShell. There are also other tools, of course. Personally, I'm a fan of PowerShell, so throughout the demos I will be using PowerShell in this case. So to obtain an access token, what we have to do, and I hope that it is a bit viewable, maybe it's a little bit small, but what we need to do is we need to construct a header, and the header has to be of a certain content type, which is specified in the documentation as well. So what we do is we construct that header with PowerShell, and that's the first step. Then what we do is we need to construct a body, and as you can see in the documentation, it needs a refresh token. The refresh token is actually the API token that we just generated. So with that we construct our body. And don't worry, this API token is in plain text, but it has already been revoked, so it's not reusable. And once we have both the header and the body, we can now send the request to our request URL. And once we do that, we do the post command. We get our access token in return, which is this long string thing. And you can also see that it has an expiration of about 1800 seconds, which is about 30 minutes. So once this access token has expired, you need to regenerate that access token again. Now there are also certain requests that you do using the API for which you need the organization ID. And the organization ID is something that you can get manually by going to the Horizon Universal Console. Simply go to your account, the drop-down menu. You can see your company name or your organization name, and below that you will see your organization ID. And there's also a copy button there as well. But of course, we can also do it in an automated way. To be honest, I didn't find it in the API documentation from VMware, but somehow I did find out that it is possible. So what we can do is, again, we construct a new header, and in this case it's application JSON type. Then we specify a body in which we specify the API token. Don't get confused with the access token. So this action specifically needs a API token. And once we have done the request to the API, you will see that you can get the organization ID there as well. So for every request that you do for which you need an organization ID, you can get it using this API call. So as a simple example, I will show you how you can add an Active Directory configuration in an automated way. So you saw that we didn't have an Active Directory configuration just yet. And what we need is our request URL, and we also need a request body. Something that hasn't been mentioned in the documentation at this point is that you also need to have a header, and that header contains the access token. So we had the API token, with the API token, we requested an access token, and now we're going to use that access token in the header as well. So in this case, we're starting from scratch again. So we have our API token, which we specify in the body. Then we will put the access token in a variable. And once that's done, we're going to construct a new header, which we need for adding the Active Directory configuration. So we have our access token available. Then we construct the header, and as you can see, we use that access token variable in the header. And then we can continue with constructing the body. Now, this is not a JSON type, but eventually with the post command, what we do is we convert the data to a JSON type. And we push that towards the API. And as you can see, we now have our first Active Directory configuration in place. And as you can see, it also reflects within the Horizon Universe console that we have a new Active Directory configuration there as well. So I just mentioned a certain format that you need, a JSON format that you have to specify. And sometimes it can get a little time consuming on how to construct such a format. So therefore what we did was we generated we created a PowerShell module, and it makes it a little bit easier. Simply what you have to do is import the PowerShell module, which is the HCS functions model. Then we can check that the module is in place, and we can get all the commands from the PowerShell module as well. So there you will see that there are various commands that you can use for creating new things, removing things, updating things, etc. And like I said, it makes it a little bit easier for automating things. So again, I'm using the creating Active Directory configuration example. Again, we don't have an Active Directory configuration in place yet. And what we do is when you look at the command that we need for configuring Active Directory is we need our access token and organization ID again. So we will create that access token, and it's using the PowerShell commandlet for that. And we do the same thing for the organization ID. And once we have that in place, it's as simple as executing a PowerShell commandlet in which we specify the access token, the organization ID, and the required parameters for configuring our Active Directory configuration. Now, of course, we can also do this with getting information. So we can get our current Active Directory configurations, and this time I requested the access token on the fly within the command for getting the Active Directory configurations. So that's also very simple. And it's the same for removing an existing Active Directory configuration as well. So we remove the Active Directory configuration again with a commandlet. And we check that the configuration is indeed removed as well. So these were just simple examples, just to get you a little bit familiar on how to get started. But you can actually achieve a lot with the API. You can even perform a full end-to-end deployment within Horizon Cloud Next Gen. So that means that you can configure your full edge configuration. Also use app volumes for importing app stacks, entitlements, but also for the dynamic environment manager configuration. So that's a configuration for the file share. You can create your automated images and your automated pulls as well. So it's a full end-to-end deployment that you can do. So to give you a little insight on how we do it, we have a single configuration file in which we specify everything that we need for our full end-to-end deployment. So again, it contains the edges with the edge gateway, the unified access gateways, Active Directory, but also images, pools, etc. And when we have that configuration file in place, it needs to be processed by something. So for that, we are using what we call processing scripts, which are PowerShell scripts that again make use of the Powershell module that I just demonstrated. And once the file is being processed, everything is being pushed as a configuration to Horizon Cloud Next Gen. Now, as a, let's say, deployment vehicle, we are using Azure DevOps. That was something that we were already using for other services as well. And within Azure DevOps, you have what is called pipelines. And a pipeline is something that you can compare with, for instance, a task sequence or a runbook. So it contains a list of actions that need to be executed. So we're talking about stages in this case, and stages can contain jobs. So another example is again the Active Directory configuration, but it can also be the edge deployment and other things as well, of course. Then we have our configuration file in which everything has been specified, so also the Active Directory configuration, and we have our processing script. Then when we run our pipeline, so our runbook, so to say, in this case, as an example, I'm just selecting the edge deployment. And once we click run, after a couple of seconds, you will see that the edge will start running, and it gives all the jobs that are available within that stage. Takes a couple of seconds. Yep, and there we have all the jobs that will be executed as part of that edge state. So we start with Active Directory, and once that is finished, you will see that our Active Directory configuration is in place in the Horizon Universal Console. Same goes for the single sign-on configuration. And when we go to our capacity page, you will see that we have our site configured, we have our provider configured, and once our provider is configured, we can continue with the actual edge deployment. And of course, I'm doing this in fast forward. It takes a couple of minutes normally. So the edge is being deployed, and after some time it gets into a connected state, and the only thing that remains for this stage is the deployment of the unified access gateways. So again, the edge stage has completed. So all the jobs that are part of that are also completed. And you can see that everything is in either a connected or a ready state. And the same goes for app volumes and Dynamic Environment Manager. Again, just an example. We're going to run this stage as well. And we select the Dynamic Environment Manager and App Volumes stage, and it will start running 2 jobs within that stage. And this time what it does, it imports a set of App Volumes applications, and it will also entitle those applications to user groups in this case. And that configuration all comes from that single configuration file that I specified earlier on. Then we do the same for Dynamic Environment Manager. So what we have is we have our file share. So that file share hosts our Dynamic Environment Manager configuration, and it all gets configured automatically as well. But like I mentioned, and for time's sake, it's just a picture in this case, but you can go through all the stages to eventually get a full end-to-end deployment. It's just starting the pipeline, and everything comes from that configuration file. So with that, I hope that I gave you a little bit of an insight of what you can achieve with the Horizon Cloud Next Gen API. If you want more information, I would recommend going to the developer website from VMware. I also have a blog series in which I talk about how to get started with the API as well. It gives you some examples. With that, I want to thank you for joining this session, and I hope you have a nice rest of VMware Explore.